There's a moment most men don't understand, a moment that happens after rejection. She says no. She walks away. She chooses someone else. And in that moment you think it's over. But then, something strange happens. Weeks pass. Maybe months. And suddenly she comes back. Not by accident. Not randomly. She reaches out. She checks on you. She reappears like nothing ever happened. And you're left wondering, why now? Why after rejecting me? What changed? Most men will tell you it's luck. Others will say it's attraction. But the truth is far deeper than that. Because women don't come back out of confusion. They come back because of a shift, not in them, but in you. And here's what most people will never tell you. Rejection is not the end of attraction. In many cases, it's the beginning of it. What if I told you that the moment she walked away was the exact moment she started watching you differently? What if her rejection wasn't a closed door, but a test you didn't even realize you were taking? And most importantly, what if the reason she comes back has nothing to do with chasing her, and everything to do with becoming the man she can't ignore anymore? In this video, you're going to understand the real reason women come back after rejecting you through the lens of Stoicism. Not manipulation, not tricks, but power, presence, and control. Because once you truly understand this, you'll stop chasing and start attracting without saying a word. Rejection feels final, but in reality, it rarely is. Most men experience rejection and immediately react. They overthink. They replay conversations in their head. They start asking themselves what they did wrong. And without even realizing it, they begin to chase, subtly, emotionally, or even silently. But here's the part no one explains. The moment a woman rejects you, she is not just walking away, she is observing. She is watching how you respond. Do you collapse emotionally? Do you become desperate for her approval? Do you try to convince her to change her mind? Or do you remain grounded? Do you stay calm, composed, and unaffected? Because in that exact moment, something psychological happens. Her perception of you is no longer based on what you said before. It is now based on how you handle loss. And this is where most men fail without even realizing it. They believe attraction is built through words, attention, and effort. But in truth, attraction is often built in silence, in absence, in how you carry yourself when things don't go your way. When you react emotionally to rejection, you confirm her decision. You show her that she made the right choice. But when you remain steady, when you don't chase, don't beg, don't try to prove yourself, something shifts. You become unpredictable. And unpredictability creates curiosity. Now she starts asking herself questions she didn't ask before. Why isn't he reacting like other men? Why does he seem so unbothered? Did I misjudge him? And just like that, the dynamic changes. You see, most men think rejection lowers their value. But from a Stoic perspective, rejection is simply an external event. It has no power unless you give it meaning. The Stoic man understands this deeply. He doesn't attach his worth to someone else's decision. He doesn't seek validation from someone who walked away. And most importantly, he doesn't abandon himself in the process. Instead, he returns to himself. He focuses on his growth, his discipline, his purpose. While others are busy trying to win someone back, he is busy becoming someone worth returning to. And this is where the real shift begins. Because while you are moving forward, improving, building, and staying silent, she is left with something rare. Absence. Not the kind of absence that comes from being ignored, but the kind that comes from self-respect. You didn't disappear to punish her. You didn't withdraw to play games. You simply chose yourself. And that is something she cannot easily replace. Most men, when rejected, stay emotionally available. They linger. They wait. They keep a door open. But when you truly let go, when you remove your presence completely, you create space. And in that space, her curiosity grows. Because now she has nothing to measure you against. No updates. No attention. No validation. Just silence. And silence is powerful. Silence forces reflection. She starts remembering your conversations, your energy, the way you carried yourself. And slowly, what she once dismissed begins to feel different. Not because you chased her, but because you didn't. This is the part most people misunderstand. Women don't come back because you convinced them. They come back because your absence made them feel something they didn't expect. A lack, a question, a shift in perception. And when that shift becomes strong enough, they return, not to the same version of you they rejected, but to the man you became after you let them go. That is the real reason, not persistence, not persuasion, but transformation. And in the next part, you'll understand something even deeper. Why her initial rejection was never truly about you in the first place. And how understanding that alone gives you a level of control most men will never reach. Here's something that will change the way you see rejection forever. Her initial rejection was never entirely about you. Most men take rejection personally. They assume it means they weren't good enough, attractive enough, or worthy enough. But the truth is far more complex, and far more liberating once you understand it. When a woman rejects you, she is making a decision based on her current emotions, her current perception, and her current situation. Not your full potential. Not your future. Not who you are becoming. Just a moment in time. Think about that. She didn't reject your entire existence. She responded to a version of you she experienced in a specific moment, under specific conditions. And those conditions are always changing. Her emotions change. Her experiences change. Her standards shift. Her perspective evolves. So the rejection you experienced was never permanent. It was temporary, tied to a version of reality that no longer exists. But here's where most men lose control. They freeze themselves in that moment. They hold on to the rejection as if it defines them. They stop growing. They stop evolving. They stay emotionally attached to how things ended, while she moves on and changes. And this creates an imbalance. Because now, instead of becoming someone new, you are trying to be accepted by someone who has already moved forward. The Stoic man does the opposite. He understands that life is constant motion. Nothing is fixed. So instead of holding on to the past, he detaches from it. Not emotionally numb, but mentally disciplined. He accepts what happened without resistance. He doesn't argue with reality. He doesn't try to rewrite the past. He simply moves forward. And in doing so, he becomes different. Stronger. More focused. More grounded. Now here's where things start to shift in a powerful way. While you are evolving, she is also going through her own experiences. Maybe the person she chose didn't meet her expectations. Maybe she started to value qualities she once overlooked. Maybe she experienced disappointment that changed how she sees men. And suddenly, the traits you had begin to stand out in her memory. Your calmness, your presence, your self-control. Things she once ignored now feel rare. But it goes deeper than that. There is something about human nature most people never fully understand. People don't value what is easily available. When you were present, interested, and within reach, your value felt predictable. But when you became unavailable, not out of anger, but out of self-respect, you became something else entirely. You became scarce. And scarcity creates value. Not because you're playing games, but because you are no longer trying to be chosen. You are choosing yourself. And that changes everything. Because now, if she thinks about you, she's not thinking about a man who wanted her. She's thinking about a man who didn't need her. A man who walked away without resistance. A man who didn't chase. A man who remained composed. And that kind of man is difficult to forget. So when she comes back, it's not random. It's the result of contrast. She compares her current experiences to the memory of you. And if that memory has grown stronger over time, she feels it. Curiosity turns into interest. Interest turns into desire to reconnect. But here's the part you must understand clearly. If you remain the same person after rejection, emotionally attached, waiting, hoping she doesn't come back, because there is no new version of you to discover, no growth, no mystery, no change. What brings her back is the gap between who you were and who you became. And that gap is created through discipline, through silence, through focus, through detachment. Not pretending you don't care, but genuinely reaching a place where your life no longer revolves around her decision. And once you reach that level, something shifts inside you. You stop needing closure. You stop needing validation. You stop needing her to return. And ironically, that is often when she does. Because now, your energy is different. You are no longer trying to be seen. You simply are. And people are naturally drawn to that. In the next part, you're going to understand one of the most powerful forces behind why women come back. Not logic, not reasoning, but emotion, specifically the emotion that grows strongest in your absence. And once you understand this, you'll never look at silence the same way again. What brings her back is not logic. It's not a checklist. It's not a sudden realization that you make sense. It's emotion. And more specifically, it's the emotion that only grows in your absence. When you're constantly present in someone's life, they don't feel the weight of losing you. Your attention becomes normal. Your presence becomes expected. Your value, no matter how strong, becomes familiar. And familiarity, over time, reduces emotional intensity. But when you're gone, truly gone, something begins to happen beneath the surface. At first, it's subtle. She notices the silence, the lack of your messages, the absence of your attention. But she tells herself it doesn't matter. She distracts herself. She moves on with her routine. She convinces herself she made the right decision. And for a while, she believes it. But then something shifts. Because absence doesn't just remove presence, it creates space. And in that space, emotions that were once quiet begin to grow louder. Memories start to replay. Not the negative ones, but the moments that felt different. The way you listened. The way you carried yourself. The calm energy you brought into conversations. Things she didn't fully appreciate when you were there, now begin to stand out. And this is where a powerful emotional force begins to build. Contrast. Her current experiences start to clash with the memory of you. Maybe the people around her lack depth. Maybe conversations feel empty. Maybe attention feels forced or superficial. And without realizing it, she begins comparing. Not consciously at first, but emotionally. And comparison is where attraction can be reborn. Because now you are no longer just that guy who liked her. You become the standard she measures others against. And if no one meets that standard, your value increases in her mind. But there's something even deeper happening. It's called emotional uncertainty. When you were present, she understood you. She knew how you felt. She knew you were interested. She knew she had some level of control over your attention. But now, she doesn't know. She doesn't know if you've moved on. She doesn't know if you still care. She doesn't know if she can get you back. And that uncertainty creates tension. Because the human mind doesn't like unfinished stories. It wants closure. It wants clarity. It wants to resolve what feels incomplete. And when you disappear without drama, without chasing, without explanation, you become an unfinished story in her mind. One she keeps returning to. One she keeps thinking about. Not because you forced it, but because you left without lowering your value. Now here's where most men make a mistake that destroys everything. They break the silence too early. They reach out. They check in. They try to stay in her mind. But in doing so, they remove the very tension that was building. They answer the questions too soon. And once the mystery is gone, so is the emotional pull. The Stoic man understands patience. He understands that not everything needs immediate action. He allows time to do what effort cannot. He allows emotions to develop naturally, without interference. Because he knows something most people ignore. Attraction that is forced fades quickly. But attraction that grows in silence lasts. So while others are trying to be remembered, he becomes unforgettable. Not through noise, but through absence. Not through effort, but through restraint. And when the emotional tension reaches a certain point, when curiosity, comparison, and uncertainty all come together, she feels the urge to reconnect. Not because she has to, but because she wants to resolve what she feels. That's when she reaches out. That's when she comes back. But here's the truth you must understand before that moment ever comes. If you are still the same person she left, you will repeat the same outcome. Because her return is not the victory. Your growth is. And in the next part, you're going to understand the final piece. What you must do when she comes back. So you don't lose your power, your position, and everything you've built within yourself. When she comes back, everything you've built is tested. Not your words, not your appearance, but your discipline. Because the moment she re-enters your life, the dynamic tries to reset. Old emotions resurface. Old habits attempt to return. That same part of you that once wanted her validation begins to wake up again. And if you're not careful, you will give away your power without even noticing. This is where most men fail for the second time. The first failure was reacting emotionally to rejection. The second, is overvaluing her return. They become too available, too eager, too quick to pick up where things left off. They forget everything they built in her absence. And in doing so, they slowly return to the version of themselves she once rejected. You must understand this clearly. Her coming back does not mean she suddenly sees you as high value. It means she is curious. It means she feels something. It means your absence created a shift. But it is not yet confirmation. And if you treat it like confirmation, you lose. The Stoic man sees her return differently. He does not get carried away by emotion. He does not rush. He does not assume anything. He observes. He listens. He pays attention to her energy, her effort, her consistency. Because now, it is no longer about proving yourself to her. It is about whether she aligns with the man you've become. This is the shift in power. Before, you were hoping to be chosen. Now you are the one choosing. And that requires control. When she reaches out, you don't ignore her out of pride. But you also don't prioritize her out of excitement. You remain balanced. You respond, not react. There's a difference. Reaction is emotional, immediate, uncontrolled. Response is measured, intentional, calm. And she will feel that difference instantly. Because most men, when given a second chance, reveal desperation through their behavior. They reply too fast. They overinvest too soon. They try to lock things in quickly. But that energy feels familiar. And familiarity, in this case, weakens attraction again. Instead, you maintain your frame. Your life remains full. Your focus remains intact. Your purpose remains unchanged. She is not the center of your world. She is a part of it, if she earns that place. And this is where respect is built. Not through dominance, but through consistency. If she senses that your standards have increased, that your time is valuable, that your attention is earned, people come and go. He doesn't remind himself to focus on his purpose. His life is already built around it. That's the level you must reach. Not temporary discipline, but permanent transformation. Because if your mindset depends on constant reminders, it will eventually break under pressure. So instead of asking, "How do I act like this?" you start asking, "Who do I need to become so this is natural to me?" And that question changes everything. Because now, your focus shifts inward. You're no longer watching her behavior. You're observing your own. You start noticing your triggers. The need for validation. The urge to chase. The discomfort of uncertainty. And instead of reacting to them, you sit with them. You understand them. You outgrow them. That's real growth. Not suppressing emotions, but mastering them. Because emotions will always exist. Attraction, attachment, desire. These are natural, but they don't have to control you. The moment you stop being controlled by them, you gain freedom. Freedom to walk away. Freedom to stay grounded. Freedom to choose what truly aligns with you. And here's what happens when you reach that level. Your interactions change completely. You stop trying to impress. You stop trying to prove. You stop trying to be enough for someone else. Because you already know your value. And that internal certainty, it shows in your tone, in your presence, in your decisions. You become harder to manipulate, harder to shake, harder to replace. Not because you're perfect, but because you're stable. And stability is rare. Now think about this. When she rejected you, you were still seeking something. Her approval, her attention, her validation. But now, you don't need any of it. And that changes the entire dynamic. Because people can feel when you need something from them. And they can feel when you don't. When you need them, you give away power. When you don't, you naturally hold it. Not in a controlling way, but in a grounded, effortless way. And that's why, even if she comes back again and again, you are no longer affected the same way. You're not pulled in emotionally. You're not thrown off your path. You're not distracted from your purpose. You engage, but you remain centered. You connect, but you stay aware. And if at any point things stop aligning, you walk away without hesitation. Not because you're cold, but because you respect yourself too much to settle. This is the final evolution. From reaction to control. From control to understanding. From understanding to identity. And once it becomes your identity, everything else becomes a byproduct. Attraction becomes natural. Respect becomes automatic. Peace becomes constant. So whether she comes back or not, whether things work out or not, you win. Because you've built something that cannot be taken from you. Yourself. If you've followed this entire journey from the beginning to now, then you already know this isn't just about relationships. It's about becoming a man who cannot be shaken by external events. So don't stop here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because this is where you continue sharpening your mindset and strengthening your discipline. And drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from, because I want to know who is truly committed to this level of growth. And more importantly, who is ready to stop chasing and start becoming. There is one truth that sits beneath everything you've heard so far, and it's uncomfortable, but necessary. You were never rejected because you lacked value. You were rejected because your value was not felt. There's a difference. Most men focus on what they have, their intentions, their loyalty, their potential. They believe that if these qualities exist, they should automatically be recognized. But the world doesn't respond to what you have internally. It responds to what you embody externally. You can be disciplined, but still come across as uncertain. You can be intelligent, but still seek approval. You can have strong values, but still tolerate disrespect. And when there's a gap between what you are and what you project, people respond to the projection. That's the hard truth. When she rejected you, she wasn't rejecting your hidden potential. She was responding to the version of you that showed up in reality. And instead of accepting that and growing from it, most men try to argue against it internally. They say, "She doesn't see my worth." They say, "She chose wrong." They say, "If she gave me a chance, she would understand." But Stoicism doesn't allow for that kind of thinking. It forces you to face reality without distortion. Not to criticize yourself, but to refine yourself. Because if there's a gap between your internal standards and your external presence, that gap must be closed. And it's closed through action, not thought. Through repetition. Through discipline. Through living in alignment with what you claim to be. When you say you value yourself, it shows in what you tolerate. When you say you're focused, it shows in how you spend your time. When you say you're calm, it shows in how you respond under pressure. There are no shortcuts here. Because people don't believe what you say. They believe what they consistently experience from you. Now here's where it becomes powerful. When you close that gap, when your internal identity and external behavior become one, your presence changes. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to seek recognition, because it's felt immediately. And that's when attraction becomes effortless. Not because you're trying to attract, but because there is no inconsistency left to question. You are clear. You are grounded. You are aligned. And that alignment creates a kind of energy that stands out in a world full of contradiction. Now think back to when she comes back. She's not coming back to your potential. She's coming back to your presence. The way you carry yourself now. The way you speak. The way you respond. Everything feels different. And that difference is what creates renewed attraction. But here's the deeper layer. If you have truly evolved, you are no longer attached to her validation of that change. You don't need her to notice it. You don't need her to confirm it. Because you already live it. And this is where most men finally break free. They stop needing to be seen. And start focusing on being solid within themselves. Because needing to be seen creates pressure. But being solid creates peace. And peace is what allows you to operate at a higher level. You make better decisions. You choose better people. You avoid unnecessary emotional chaos. You become selective. Not out of arrogance, but out of awareness. You understand that not every connection deserves your time. Not every person deserves access to your energy. And that includes the woman who once rejected you. Because growth is not proven by getting her back. It's proven by outgrowing the need for her. Let that sink in. The moment you no longer need her is the moment you can truly decide if you even want her. And those are two completely different positions. Need comes from lack. Want comes from choice. And only one of those creates power. So when she returns, you're not standing there hoping things work out. You're standing there evaluating. Does this align with who I am now? Does this match the standards I've built? Does this bring peace into my life? And if the answer is yes, you move forward, slowly, intentionally. If the answer is no, you walk away calmly, without regret. That is the final form of control. Not controlling others, but being completely in control of yourself. Because at the highest level, this was never about her leaving, or her coming back. It was about you becoming a man who is no longer moved by either. A man who doesn't rise with attention, and doesn't fall with rejection. A man who remains steady, regardless of circumstances. And when you reach that level, something shifts permanently. You stop chasing outcomes. You stop fearing loss. You stop reacting to every emotional wave that comes your way. You become centered. And from that center, you build a life that is not dependent on anyone else's decisions. So whether she comes back, or whether she never returns again, you remain whole. And that is something most people spend their entire lives searching for, but never truly find. If you've reached this point, then you already feel the difference. This isn't surface level advice. This is transformation. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, because this is where you continue building that level of clarity, discipline, and control. And before you leave, drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Because I want to know who is not just listening, but actually evolving, continuing from where it stopped. But there's still one more layer most men never fully grasp, even after all of this understanding. Because even when you've done the work, even when you've built discipline, even when you've detached, there is still a final trap waiting for you. And it is subtle. It's the belief that once you reach this new version of yourself, you are now immune to emotion, that you will never feel anything again, that rejection won't affect you, that attraction won't pull you, that you've somehow become untouchable. But that is not Stoicism. That is suppression. And suppression always breaks. The Stoic man does not remove emotion. He removes control from emotion. He still feels. He still notices. He still experiences attraction, curiosity, even disappointment. But he no longer obeys those feelings blindly. And that distinction is everything. Because the real test doesn't come when she is gone. It doesn't come when you are in silence. It comes when life reintroduces emotion back into your space. When she returns. When she looks different. When she acts softer. When she says things that reopen old doors inside you. That is the real moment of truth. Not what you know, but who you are in that moment. Because in that moment, your past self and your new self will both try to speak. Your past self will say, "This is your chance. Don't mess it up. Don't lose her again." But your new self will say, "Observe. Don't rush. Don't react. Don't abandon yourself." And whichever voice you obey is the version of you that still controls your life. This is why most men repeat cycles. Not because they lack information, but because they lack consistency under emotional pressure. Now listen closely to this part. When she comes back into your life, she is not just returning physically. She is returning into your emotional environment. And that environment determines everything. If your environment is still needy, she will feel it instantly. If your environment is still reactive, she will sense it immediately. If your environment is still hoping for validation, she will unconsciously regain power in the dynamic. But if your environment is grounded, calm, non-reactive, self-contained, then something very different happens. She feels it, but she cannot control it. And that is what changes everything. Because attraction is not just built on presence or absence. It is built on emotional positioning. Where you stand internally determines how others respond to you externally. And most men never adjust that position. They adjust behavior, not identity. They act calm, but inside they are anxious. They act detached, but inside they are waiting. They act unaffected, but inside they are tracking every detail. And people feel that contradiction, even without words. So the real transformation is not how to act after rejection. It is becoming someone whose internal state does not collapse under external change. Now here's where this becomes even deeper. At a certain point in your growth, something strange happens. You stop romanticizing return. You stop attaching meaning to her coming back. You stop seeing it as success. Because you realize something important. Her return is not proof of your value. And her absence was never proof of your lack. Both were just events. Neutral events. But your interpretation gave them meaning. And that meaning shaped your emotions. This is where Stoicism fully separates you from the average mindset. Because the average man lives inside interpretation. while the Stoic man lives closer to reality. And reality is simple. People come and go. Interest changes. Emotions fluctuate. Circumstances shift. Nothing stays fixed. So instead of building identity around outcomes, you build identity around stability. And once stability becomes your foundation, you no longer get pulled into extremes. Not extreme hope when she returns. Not extreme pain when she leaves. Just awareness. Just clarity. Just observation. And from that state, your decisions become cleaner. You don't overinvest. You don't undervalue yourself. You don't rush emotional outcomes. You simply respond to what is real in front of you. Not what you fear. Not what you hope. Not what you imagine. Now let's go even deeper. There is something that happens after long enough silence and growth that most men don't expect. You stop needing closure. The questions that once haunted you. Why did she leave? Did she ever care? Will she come back? They start to lose emotional weight. Not because they are answered, but because they stop mattering. And this is a powerful shift, because unanswered questions only have power over an uncertain mind. When the mind becomes stable, questions lose control over you. And in that space, something new forms. Self-direction. You are no longer reacting to her story. You are writing your own. And that is the final separation. Because at that point, even if she comes back again, or never comes back at all, your foundation does not move. You are not rebuilding yourself based on her presence. You are continuing yourself regardless of her absence. And this is where most people finally misunderstand Stoicism entirely. Stoicism is not about not caring. It is about not being controlled. It is not about shutting people out. It is about not losing yourself when people come in or out. Now if you bring all of this together, the rejection, the silence, the return, the emotional shift, it was never about her. It was always about exposure. Exposure of your reactions. Exposure of your attachment. Exposure of your internal stability. And through that exposure, you either repeat old patterns, or you evolve beyond them. And if you truly have been following this path, then by now, something inside you should already feel different. Not louder, not emotional, but clearer. Because clarity is what remains when illusion fades. So the final question is not, will she come back? The real question is, who are you when nothing is guaranteed? Because that is the version of you that everything else responds to. Not your words, not your past, not your potential, but who you are right now, in silence, without validation, without certainty. That is what defines your reality. And when you finally understand that, you stop waiting for life to give you meaning, and you start living as the source of it. So when you strip everything away, the silence, the rejection, the return, the confusion, the overthinking, what's left is the truth most men avoid facing. It was never really about her. It was never about why she left, or why she came back, or what she was thinking in between. It was about what you became through it all. Because in life, people will come close, step away, return again, or disappear completely. That will always change. That part is never in your control. But what is in your control is who you are while all of that is happening. Do you collapse when you are rejected? Do you lose yourself in silence? Do you overvalue someone the moment they return? Or do you remain steady, aware, and grounded no matter what shifts around you? That is the real test. And once you see that clearly, you stop building your identity around people's behavior. You stop chasing closure. You stop searching for meaning in someone else's decisions. You stop trying to decode why things didn't work out. Because you understand something deeper now. Nothing outside of you was ever meant to define you in the first place. Not rejection. Not attention. Not absence. Not return. All of it was just experience. And experience is only valuable when it makes you stronger, not when it controls you. So if she comes back, you don't panic. If she doesn't, you don't break. You simply continue forward with clarity. Because at that point, your life is no longer organized around who stays or leaves. It is organized around who you are becoming. And when you finally reach that state, something powerful happens without effort. You don't chase anymore. You don't wait anymore. You don't need to prove anything anymore. You just live. And that is the real victory. Not getting her back. Not keeping her. Not understanding her. But becoming a man who is unaffected by whether any of that happens at all. That is where control ends, and mastery begins. If this message changed the way you see rejection, attraction, and self-control, don't ignore that feeling. It means you're starting to see things differently. Subscribe to the channel, because this is where we break down mindset, discipline, and Stoic principles that actually change how you move in real life. And before you leave, drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. But more importantly, tell me this. Are you still reacting to life? Or are you finally learning how to stay in control of yourself? Because the moment that shift happens, everything else in your life starts to change too.